Nothing is constant except change. This is something I always heard around me, but I never really paid attention until it started happening to me faster than I could process. These days, life feels like a blur. Everyone's running somewhere towards success, money, approval. And somewhere in that rush, I realized I was getting lost. So, this talk isn't a guide, it's not a lesson. It's just me making sense of growing up and maybe giving you a few moments to think alongside with me. My name is Lisa Maria Antony, a junior at Concordia International School, Hanoi. When I got the chance to speak here, I thought long and hard about what I wanted to talk about. I considered talking something related to the education field, the STEM field, or maybe even AI. Because let's be honest, AI has taken the world by storm, and everyone wants to talk about it. But I kept coming back to something more personal, something I haven't fully figured out, but something I kept noticing. Growing up, I had many interests, but not enough commitment. One month, I was convinced I'd become an engineer, the next, a doctor, the next, a designer, and the next month, something entirely different. I was curious about everything, but didn't have commitment to or anything. For a long time, I thought that meant something was wrong with me because everyone seemed so sure about what they wanted in life, so sure of what their future would be like. And it didn't help that the questions became louder. What do you want to be? Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? What is your plan? Somewhere between all the pressure, all the questions, I felt a pressure to choose correctly, confidently, and perfectly. I used to think uncertainty meant I was failing or something was wrong with me, but the more people I talked to, the more I realized everyone is just guessing. Everyone is not sure about what they want in life. They're just guessing. And the people who seem so confident are just hoping they made the right choice. This is something I read that stuck with me. American author Andy Andrews once said, living life itself is a privilege, but living life to the fullest, that is a choice. That got me thinking, what is living life? I thought living life to the fullest meant doing something impressive, something huge, traveling the world. But lately, it's been starting to look very different for me. Noticing where I am instead of rushing to the next thing, letting myself explore instead of forcing clarity, living life to the living life to the fullest. It wasn't a dramatic decision. It was a quiet one. It's not about escaping responsibility. It's about not letting the race consume you. That's when I got thinking, have I been living my life? Here's the funny part. While I was stressing so much about my future, I barely realized when my childhood had ended. One day I was playing, and the next day I was planning. And that shift happened, and I can't tell you when that happened, but I can tell you it felt fast. A few months ago, I experienced this in the most unexpected way. I was traveling in a bus, and I met this really cute girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, and then we got talking. I asked how old she was, and she said she turned 5 this year, and she said that really proudly. And then she asked me how old I was. I told her I was 16 years old. She went quiet, and she gave me the stare that kids give when they're thinking really hard about something. And then after a good 5 seconds, she opened her mouth and told, "Wow, you're old." I laughed at that moment because, yeah, that's true. And I told her, "Yes, I am a lot older to you." That moment stayed with me. And deep down, I realized something. At the age of 16, I was already the older one. I already had old trends, old shows, old memories. I was already from a different era, at least to people younger to me. That made me think about childhood, not just mine, but how differently it looked across generations. Every generation experienced childhood a little differently. They experienced time differently. In my family alone, it was three very different stories. My grandmother grew up in a world that moved slowly. She played outside until sunset because time then was measured by daylight, not deadlines. Games weren't bought, they were invented. She played hopscotch, tag, hide and seek, marbles, caroms, games that needed nothing but people and time. She had fewer choices, but more time. Let's shift our view to my parents' childhood. My parents' childhood was already faster. They had the television. And when I'm talking about television, I'm not talking about those 80-inch thin screen televisions. I'm talking about those big boxy kinds. The ones that have 5 channels, a television, a news channel, a sports channel, a kids channel, an adult channel, and a national wildlife geography. They played cricket outside with a bat, a ball, a lot of people, and a lot of smashed windows. They boasted about their tiny music players and cassettes. They waited weeks, an entire week, for the episodes of their favorite shows to air. Patience was built into everyday living. They had more technology, but still had enough patience. And then there's my childhood. Somewhere between the playground and the screen, I grew up watching shows like Doraemon, Dora the Explorer, Bubble Guppies, Umi Zoomies. I collected fidget spinners, tiny game consoles, and Barbie flip phones. And the people around me were doing bottle flips. It was also around the time when touchscreen mobile phones became popular. So people played games like Candy Crush, Temple Run, and Talking Tom. I switched hobbies every term. Road trips, that's a whole another story. Road trips meant my dad playing Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, and me asking him to play the same old Disney soundtrack again and again. And I still have those big CD pouches filled with old Disney movies, but sadly, no way to play them. I had endless options, but almost no stillness. Those are just 3 stories. I know. Yours might be look yours might look completely different, shaped by your culture, your family, your tradition, and the world you grew up in. But something I realized looking at this childhood and the kids today, childhood feels faster. Shows come in full seasons, not episodes. Trends last weeks, not years. Games are downloaded, not built. Childhood used to be something about slow discovery, but now it feels like fast consumption. And it's not that childhood looks different, it's about how time feels faster with every childhood. And none of this is bad. It's just different. You are like a fish in the water of change. What I'm asking you to do is not to change the water you swim in, but to be more aware of it. I'm not asking you to change the way you live, but to live in the moment and be more aware. And also, one more thing I realized each childhood, each generation didn't just lose something, it gained something too. My grandmother gained freedom, my parents gained connections, I gained access, and the next generation will gain possibilities we can't even imagine. So, this isn't a story about loss, it's a story about awareness. Because the real problem here isn't that childhood looks different, it's that we don't always notice it while we're living it. We're so busy recording the moments that we forget to experience them. We're so focused on becoming someone that we forget who we already are. When that little girl on that bus called me old, I laughed. But a part of me realized something important. One day, someone else will look at her and say the very same thing. And like that, her childhood would have passed. Time doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't slow down when you feel overwhelmed. It just keeps moving. But you get to choose how present we are while it does. So maybe living life to the fullest isn't about knowing what your future is like or having a 5-year plan. Maybe it's about pausing long enough to remember the shows you loved, the games you played, the songs that made you feel safe. Maybe it's about protecting a little bit of your childhood, not just for the kids, but for yourself. Before, when the adults around me went back in my days, I always laughed. But today, I started realizing why they did that. So go ahead, tell a friend, talk to a parent, talk to a teacher, tell them about your childhood and reminisce, not just for them, but also for yourself, to, to remember who you are and to protect that childhood for yourselves. Because growing up is inevitable, but growing distance from our own lives, that doesn't have to be. Thank you.